Welcome to Friday night's video in our Master Series. This is the 125th video in our Master Series and the 11th video in our group processing phase. I hope I made it pretty clear in the last video about the tool that you have as upward expansion and upwards compression to try to help you fill things out and finish things off, since it's, the mix is a whole track unto itself. That can be a very helpful tool. When we get to the end of this, it's expansion, upwards compression, upwards expansion, and compression and maximization, which are going to be in this video. So once again, in front of all these, I am definitely going back and telling you that the 3 steps forward and 1 step back thing is a huge concept and a workflow to get through your head. So any work you do here that you evaluate on the individual tracks and buses to see if it can be done there. And then if you've done any work, go back 1 step at a time to see if you need to do any work to adjust in there, and then going through all these buses and the processing buses we've done to see if you need to change any of the work you've done. And then when you get back here to make any, you might have to change what you did again because of any adjustments you made somewhere else along the processing line. So just keep that in mind. That will really help you make you a better engineer. And also automation and treating every section it's possibly its own mix, and to really get used to your automation tools, because each different section might have different needs that you might have to process differently to make that section sound as good as it can, and so that the whole mix comes out as sounding as good as it can. And to use your analysis tools on your main bus going to the main out, so you can keep an eye on what's happening to help you make better decisions, to see issues you might be happening, and to see what you've done while you're processing. So, and to help you. So, the other thing is, when we get to the compression bus, if you're doing a heavy compression, go back and watch that video, Master Series 107, a better way to compress to achieve maximum, compression. You will find that video will help you a lot in a lot of productions. Whether or not you're trying to get really heavy compression or not, that it can be very helpful. And so when we get to this compression bus, we have to always remember that we're just trying to sweeten the mix. We're really not trying to do a whole lot of compression at this point. If we're done doing heavy compression, I probably would do it like I did in that video that I showed you in Master Series 107. But sometimes I will do a little bit. And if I'm going to put the compressors in series, which means I'm going to have one ratio here. The next compressor is going to have a little bit higher ratio. The next compressor is going to have a little bit higher ratio, to do it a little bit at a time. And it just takes experimentation. I'm going to have a fairly stiff knee on this first one. It's going to have a little softer knee here, and it's going to have a little softer knee here. But I'll basically leave my attack pretty fast, my release pretty slow like that. And one at a time that you go through that, starting out at like minus 3 dB like we had set the mix to be maxing out at, and then start bringing that threshold down a little bit, A-Bing it back and forth, walking away, coming back, A-Bing it back and forth. I can add a little bit more, looking over here at each one of those individuals. You want to be careful. If you get over minus 3 dB of compression, more than 3 dB of compression, it's probably a little much. So do them in series if you're trying to get heavy compression. But most of the time with a maximizer on the end of it, because with a maximizer on the end of it, you can go ahead and squish it a little bit more, and you get normalization, maximization of loudness, you get some compression, and you get some limiting going all at the same time, that you can really achieve some great compression and maximization if you're going heavy. So now, most of the time I'm not. At this point, then I'm really trying to sweeten the mix. So I'm normally going to have maybe 1 or 2 compressors here, but normally just 1, because I might have some out of control dynamics where I'm trying to level level things out to where things are staying pretty consistent. That way that I don't have the listener listening to my mix and then all of a sudden things are jumping out at them. Does that make sense? To where things that are supposed to be on the top are on top but aren't spiking in your face. That way that it doesn't distract from all the other things that are supposed to be backing and supporting and complementing and working with it, that it will draw attention away from them and cause it to not sound consistent and level across. So I'll go through there and start look at my spectrometers, look at my level meters and things like that, and I'm really going through and seeing, if I'm having issues, So, I mean, I'm bringing that, I start on -3 dB and I'll start bringing it down on there watching this. I mean, at most, sometimes I get like 0.5 dB, a dB. Sometimes, I mean, it heavily would be up to a 3 dB of compression that it might be showing. That I'm basically just trying to catch anything that might be spiking along there. And sometimes it's better to go back to those original tracks and fuss with it there and deal with it there because it's some certain track that's doing it. Normally it's going to be the out front track that you need to just kind of tame it. But sometimes you don't have to worry about it. You can just deal with it here, and because it's not a big issue. You just listen to it, and you got a few things maybe jumping out a little bit too much, so you just want to tame it down a little bit. You're not doing a whole lot of dynamic range compression. There's some videos on my channel about compressors and their uses. We're not trying to color the sound or anything like that. We've done any work that we're going to do with that, and if you have outboard gear, you're trying to use that, then you're going to have to work out a different workflow to work that in there, because that would basically be part of, you're adding your saturation and noise and things like that. So it's a pretty simple concept. You're bringing it down a little bit, checking it out, A-Bing it back and forth, looking at your meters, and sit back and really listen to it. Things are jumping out just a little bit too much, and you're trying to tame that down a little bit so that it's got a little bit more level. Things might jump up a little bit here and there, but it's more level. That way you don't get things jumping out in your face that just cause things to not sound consistent, and it the listener will be listening on the out front thing going on, but if it jumps out about too much dynamics, it starts causing an issue to where they're paying attention to that instead of paying attention to the vocalist and how it's working with the music behind it that are supportive and backup tracks, and can cause a detrimental effect of the song or your producing a detrimental effect. Does that make sense? So taming that and getting them a little more consistent going across there in their levels can be very desirable sometimes. Now, sometimes it won't be, and you want that dynamic thing happening in certain sections of your song or in certain productions, and you have to really consider that. That's a personal taste sometimes. Sometimes I'll have some productions and I got wild dynamics going all over the place. I'm like, no, I'm not fussing with that at all because I will screw it up. I mean, that's the effect of this production and this song. It's like, yeah. And it's like bam and whoa, and then down, and then quiet, medium, and loud, soft, loud, light in your face, and it's like, and you got to be careful. But most of the time we're dealing with spikes and things like that, and just, taming anything riding on the top of the mix. So it's a pretty simple concept. Once we get done with that, I love my maximizers, and they almost go on every production that I do. This is going to maximize the loudness of the desired dynamics you've chosen. It's going to normalize the track really well. It's going to limit the track, and it's going to add a little bit of compression, which can be great. Once you get used to using them, some of them got different algorithms and things like that you start, you set, a ceiling that's under 0, and then you start bringing this down onto it and A-Bing it back and forth, listen to it. It can add this it can really cause certain sections that you're working on to have a huge impact that it just, enhances the impact of that section to where it's just like bam in your face, but still preserving a lot of the dynamics that you're trying to preserve. So it's a great tool. I love my Maximizer, and I almost use it on every production, because it just kind of finishes out my track. I'll put a limiting bus on after this bus just to bring it down to the level I'm trying to set for headroom, and then I don't fuss with that. But this is basically the last processing I'm really worried about. And this really takes some investigation on your part to really learn about them and learn about using them. Practice using them on a mix to see what the effect is, because you might, use it for one section and not another section, or you might use it across the whole production to really maximize the sound of it. And the really cool thing about it, with it doing the things that it does, that you can actually attain quite a bit of that and still preserve a lot of dynamics. You can go quite light with this and still preserve a whole lot of the dynamics in your production that you're wanting to preserve. And in certain areas, you might want to really kick it up. You might want to be right there for that break or something. I'm really going to maximize it there. Bam! And it's like, because it's maximizing everything. Like compression to some point, but a little bit differently the way the algorithm works. and it's a great tool. You really need to get used to using it, but using it the same way that we've talked about using any other tools or plugins or anything like that. Remember the workflow, 3 steps or 1 step back, really evaluating it, bringing it in there, A-Bing it back and forth. What's it doing? Yeah. Backing off again, coming into it again, and doing that 2 or 3 times and walking away, and well, yeah, right there, yeah, that's great, man. This chorus sounds awesome. Bam, in your face. It's limiting, it's compressing it, it's maximizing, it's normalizing it all at one time, and it just sounds sweet. And some of these different algorithms will do it a little bit different to attain a little bit different effect. So it's a great tool that I really recommend you sticking on the end of your processing chain when you're doing group processing. We'll have a limiter on after this, but that's just to catch anything going through. So I hope that's really simple and really easy to understand, and understand the importance of the impact that this tool can really have on your mix, and the simple thing of sweetening things up and dealing with a little bit of taming that we use the compressor for. So basically, that's about it. It's a pretty simple concept, and like anything else, it takes experimentation. You understand basically what we're trying to do, and you understand that you need to hear it on whatever type of work that you're doing, and evaluate its valuability in a certain production or in some certain section of whatever you might be doing. But basically, that's what my compression bus normally is for. If I got other things going on that I'm worried about compression and maximization, then I'm more than likely going to go back to those individual tracks, or the tracks in individual groups, or the buses coming off there to deal with any major work I have that I want to do. This is very finite work and very delicate work. We're trying to sweeten things up just to finish off the mix, and it's just some final delicate touches that we're putting on the mix to finish it up so we can take the song into mastering. So, the biggest thing about this bus is to really learn your compressors very well and what they're doing, and be able to hear and visualize what they're doing well, and your maximizers understanding what it's doing, the effect that it's having, and understand where and when that might be desirable and not desirable. And it's also an artistic decision, and it's a decision of personal preference, which is impossible to teach, as is just about most other things when you're dealing with music. And so it's more like, this is possible, and whether or not you decide to do that is debatable. So, but it is the next step that I suggest putting in the processing chain to finish up the processing after you've done mixing. And you will find that once you master that with the compression and maximization, that by the time you're done with everything else, just remember, once you get done with that, go back through that. You might have to reevaluate each one of these at a time. You might rework that a little bit, see what's going on. You might have to do some adjustments. Then by the time you get back to here, after reevaluate that and work that a little bit differently after any adjustments you made. And that's always a good workflow, so that you do a really good job as an engineer. So basically, at this point, your production should sound pretty good if you've done a really good job of what I've been trying to tell you to do. So in the next video, we're just going to talk about limiting it out, getting some headroom set, and then getting it ready to go into mastering. So if you have any questions, just ping me on the channel, but that should, for the most part, finish out your mix. And before we go into limiting, which is a very minor thing, just to give ourselves some headroom and make sure that we catch anything that might jump out of the ranges that we've set. So peace, hope, love. I hope you enjoy experimenting with your sweetening of your track with some light compression and some maximization using a maximizer, and experimenting with the workflow I've tried to lay out with you so far in this group processing. And I'll see you in the next video when we limit our production and give ourselves some headroom and get ready to go into mastering.